Healthy, Wealthy and Wise, proudly brought to you by Uncle Toby's and Edgel's new frozen vegetable range.
Welcome to Healthy, Wealthy and Wise. Glad you could join us. The Paddington Bazaar has added colour and life to this already interesting part of Sydney since it started in 1973. It's a great place to pick up a unique gift, a fantastic bargain, and it's also a meeting place that's always attracted an eclectic mix of street performers, buskers and musicians. The Paddington Bazaar on Oxford Street has over 240 stalls and is open every Saturday from 10 till 4.
Ooh.
For most people, visiting and manoeuvring through stalls and crowds is something that we take for granted. Not so for everyone. Tonight, we meet Bruce Cameron, an inspiring man who's put his experiences of travelling around Australia in a wheelchair on paper. It's a book that will benefit many people.
The first step in this process...
Also tonight, Tonya Todman gives your old sofa a new look. Ian Hewitson makes a tangy barbecue chutney. We've checked out some new craft books from off the shelf. We restore an old roller or two. And we decide to pamper your kitten with some natural care. But first, the fruits of hard labour.
You know, sometimes in this country, the best business ideas are right under our nose, or in this case, literally growing on the side of the road. This is a quandong tree. It has a fruit. These aren't yet ripe. Yet, you know, many Australians have never even heard of it. Tonight, we meet a young man who believes this fruit has a great future.
Oh, this product code here should go all right, Nick. Seems to have taken off well.
26-year-old Ben McNamara has developed a business which is rapidly growing, a commercial quandong farm. In the nursery he built himself, he nurtures several varieties of the fruit, Centralum acuminatum, often called the Australian wild peach or quandong, before transplanting to the farm paddock. So from seedling to full production, how long would a quandong tree take?
Oh, about 6 to 7 years, but we've been able to get fruit here in 3 to 4 years. You know, small quantities, a couple of trees that I've shown you before. You know,
when we were at Ben's farm near Tumby Bay in South Australia, most of the quandong fruit was still green. You got one here, and that's just turning, is it?
Yeah, this fruit's just turning, so another a few months it should be quite ripe. It'll come away from the stone. This one should swell up to about 1.5 inches in diameter, which will be an extraordinarily large fruit.
Ben does more than just grow quandongs. He also dreams up new products and ways to market them. His success is an inspiring story which in 1991 earned him the Channel 10 Young Achiever Award. Even more importantly, his expanding quandong business has enabled him to buy back half the farm the bank took off his parents. His mum Jackie says her no longer little boy has been a real get-up-and-goer.
He presented me with the little bag first, and for a little snotty-nosed kid to come with this bag and with a little recipe on the side, it was quite fantastic.
So he's always been a bit of an entrepreneur.
Oh, yes, yes. He used to grow all these vegetables. Not just a wheelbarrow load, like a Toyota load, and say, OK, Mum, you know, eat, cook, tomatoes like this. And, yes.
Few business successes come easily. Ben, an agricultural graduate, worked 16 hours a day, every day, to chase his dream, and had more than his fair share of setbacks on the way. But you lived through seeing the family lose the farm to the bank and having to fight to get it back again.
Yeah, well, they were long ads. Yeah. Spent then, you know, trying to market as well as, you know, do that.
Then you had a big flood 2 years after you started that took everything you had away.
Yeah, well, the hailstorm that, took a lot of work away, yeah.
And you still carried on.
Yeah, well, you got to do something. So, yeah, we believed in what we were doing, so we just stuck at it, and now we're starting to see the fruits of, you know, what we're doing.
If you were talking to Mr. and Mrs. Average,
Yep.
and who've never ever had quandongs before, and they can buy your finished product, of course, but you can buy the dried quandong as well, can't you?
Yes.
What would you say is the thing they should start experimenting with?
Right, well, everybody knows that with quandongs you make quandong pie. The first thing they come in, have you got quandong pie? So luckily we have a little bag of fruit, 100 gram of fruit, and that swells up to 400 grams. So what we say to them is soak it in water and it plumps up to 4 times the amount, and they can put up to double amount of apple if they want. And that little bag will make 3 of these pies. So you put your apple with your quandongs after it's plumped up, stew it up, put a little bit of sugar, only a small amount because you don't want to adulterate the taste, touch your lemon or vanilla, and you stew it up and put it into a pie.
And the pie and the homemade scones were absolutely glorious, with a taste to my palate rather like a mixture of quince, raspberry jam with a touch of rhubarb. Beside the delicious taste, Ben says quandongs have good nutritional value.
It's a fruit that's very high in pectin and acid and has a very high vitamin C content. So with a little fruit, it's equivalent to about 2 oranges. So it's vitamin C for a health mark. It's a very nice fruit.
Ben's farm, Shoalmurra, is open to tourists on Tuesdays or by appointment, and Jackie is the tour guide. The product range is continually expanding, and interstate and overseas orders are rolling in. With the farm several years away from full production, the future's looking bright. And I reckon Ben's mum has been caught up in the enthusiasm of her son.
My aim is when the Sydney Olympics come, it's just going to be very common. Quandong pie or quandongs over ice cream, that'll be their national sweet.
And if you're interested in growing your own quandong tree, Ben McNamara can supply seeds or even seedlings with detailed advice on how to care for them. And if you do a good job, a few years from now, Ben might just buy the fruit off you to satisfy what he confidently predicts will be an established demand in the marketplace.
I believe most Australians should try it, and once they do, they'll believe, what most of the older generation do, that it is a wonderful fruit to be eaten, especially like with its vitamin C content.
And it's ours that it's Ridgy Aussie.
Yes, it is. It's one of our own fruits, and let's eat it before it goes overseas.
Well, as you can see, there's an awful lot you can do with quandongs. Let's see what my mate Huey can do with them.
I don't know whether it's common knowledge, but Jim Brown is a very keen barbecue cook, so I thought I'd make a quandong chutney. It's a recipe of that great South Australian chef Maggie Beer, and it is very, very, very simple. Let's just have a look. The measurements have to be exact. 400 mils of water, 200 mils of white vinegar, 30 grams of sugar, and 30 grams of dried quandongs. And you just mix those up really well, and then you bring it to the boil and boil it for exactly 10 minutes. Or when the quandongs are soft, we just remove them from the liquid, just with something like this spider, drain them reasonably well, but just get most of them out. I think maybe a better idea if we got all of them out, to be honest. Yeah, well, lucky last, doesn't want to come out. And then just keep the heat high, and what we do with this liquid is we'll reduce that to a glaze. Now this is the part that you have to be a little careful, because this is when it can burn. What you want is a glaze just like that, but a few seconds more and you could have a burnt mess. So watch that, Jim. What we then do is return the quandongs to the glaze, mix it in really well, just let it bubble for a few seconds. Make sure we get it mixed in. Turn it off, allow it to cool. Perfect with any barbecued meats.
I believe you can divide animal lovers into two categories: people who love dogs and people who love cats. Well, tonight I'm talking to the cat community. There are plenty of natural herbs, oils and vitamins that can keep our feline friends clean and free of disease. To remove dirt and dead hair from their coats, cats use their tongues. and as a result they can get hairballs. Olive oil added to your cat's food once a month should help prevent this problem. To condition a cat's coat, I have an easy lotion for you to make. To 50 ml of almond oil, I've added 10 ml of jojoba oil and 5 drops of geranium oil. You spray this slightly over the cat and then you just brush it in. The jojoba oil helps to condition and protect, the almond oil gives it a lovely sheen, and the geranium helps to keep the skin from drying out. For skin problems, mix together some chamomile and lavender in a little wheat germ oil and apply every day to the affected area. And if your cat's bad breath bothers you, wipe over his teeth with bicarb soda mixed with a drop or two of peppermint oil. Kitty litter trays need to be cleaned regularly to prevent disease. Even in the cleanest households, cats can leave an unpleasant odour. But to help overcome this, you can pick some fresh rosemary, lavender or chamomile from your garden and dry it out. Alternatively, you can buy it already dried. All you have to do is sprinkle it over the kitty litter, just distributing it well. And this not only freshens up the kitty litter, but also the room it's in. Remember, cats need to scratch. So if your pet is indoors a lot, provide him with a scratching post. Put a few drops of valerian herb or cat mint on it, and he'll prefer to claw at this rather than your furniture. Now, to get rid of fleas, there are a few natural remedies you could try. First, a natural repellent that you can just drop onto the cat's collar. And all you need to do is get a few mils of gin or vodka, a couple of drops of cedarwood, citronella and lavender, and then apply it to the cat's collar. And you should apply this to the collar about once a month. Or if you'd rather a flea powder, take about half a cup of Fuller's Earth, kaolin or rice flour, available from chemists or health food shops, and add 2 drops of geranium, 2 drops of citronella and 2 drops of lavender oil. Now all you do is just mix it through, let it stand for a few hours, and then put it in an old salt shaker and brush it through the cat's coat. If he licks it off, it won't hurt him. Now cats can suffer with sore and painful joints, and to help this I've made up a solution with some grapeseed oil, some ginger, chamomile and rosemary. Just put a little on the fingers and then massage it around the joint area that's affected. The cats don't mind it. Once you've done this, store it in a dark coloured bottle and apply it once or twice a day. To keep cats off the garden, spray the area with citronella or plant some strong smelling dogbane. They absolutely hate it. But here's something they'll love. These little herb bags are easy to make. All you need to do is sew up a rectangle, leaving the top end open. Once you've done that, just fill it with some dried cat mint and some lavender. Pop it in and then sew the top back up. Sprinkle a few drops of lavender essential oil onto the bag and a few drops of valerian herb. Pop this into the cat's bedding. Not only will it help to relax the cat, but it will also help to repel insects. And finally, just a reminder, cats can cause allergies. So if you suffer from hay fever, asthma or skin irritations, don't get too close.
In tonight's Off the Shelf, we're looking at the great range of craft books currently available. And to start off is this series of beautiful books that I think are very well priced at just $19.95 each. The series comprises 4 books in diverse areas of craft. Each book has step-by-step projects, a history of the craft, and all the materials you'll need to get started. If you've always thought machine embroidery too tricky to tackle, then this may just change your mind. Wirework demonstrates a variety of wire projects, from the practical to the whimsical. Creative Plasterwork shows how to make moulds and decorate plasterwork. And in Ribbon Work, learn ribbon weaving techniques along with the ever-popular ribbon embroidery. Now here's something for quilters, 2 very different books on designs and techniques. Speed quilting has been written for people who love to sew but are short on time. Author Cheryl Fall looks at what she called the beauty of rotary cutting, as well as other shortcuts including machine applique and the use of pre-packaged binding. Of course, If you have the time, she also details the more traditional methods. Amish and Mennonite quilts is a collection of the traditional patterns. There are 9 classic quilts, and each design has 3 contemporary versions. This cleverly packaged gilding kit actually contains a project book and all the materials you'll need for your first gilding project, including 10 sheets of Dutch gold metal. There are 17 step-by-step projects with a skill rating for beginners, intermediate or advanced gilders. Another gilding book is by Elizabeth Garrett, whose work we've featured on Healthy, Wealthy and Wise. Apart from projects for the home, Elizabeth has also included special crafts for weddings and for Christmas. And finally, there's the Practical Guide to Decorative Antique Effects, which shows you how to easily transform furniture and small decorative items. Many of us are familiar with finishes such as decoupage and crackling, but there are some surprises. I love the idea of using bubble wrap to block print an object, and there's a really clever way to create irregular paint finishes with a sheet of newspaper.
Coming up next, travelling around Australia in a wheelchair. An inspiring story of one man's determination to explore this fabulous country of ours on his terms. Australians who have caught the travel bug will be familiar with travel guides like The Lonely Planet that give handy information on transport, accommodation and the sights to see. Well, now there's a new travel guide on the market called Easy Access Australia, catering to a specific audience. Those people who love to travel and explore this great country of ours, but have difficulty getting around.
Is she the only barking owl that you have here?
Oh, we have one more. The author of Access Travel, Bruce Cameron, is a paraplegic, but that hasn't stopped him from travelling around Australia and filling his international passport with stamps. Bruce enjoys visiting wonderful tourist attractions like Hillsville Sanctuary, as he did before his swimming accident 20 years ago. Well, it's a fabulous book. What made you write it?
I was in the UK and having a terrible time finding access information and thought, well, hang on, Australia's better off than this, and decided there and then that I wanted to put the guide together.
And then you had that terrible time of having to go around to Australia and doing all that research.
It was shocking. It was terrible.
The book was researched by people in wheelchairs, with the view that where a wheelchair can go, so can anyone on frames, crutches and other walking aids. With our ageing population, there's a great need for a book like this. It's also handy for people with temporary mobility problems, sprained ankles or tender hips and knees. No doubt pushers will find it useful too. Have you always been a keen traveller?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a trip overseas as a kid, and I think it started there, and I've travelled lots of places since. I really love going to the Territory, to the job that they've done up there. A good example would be, say, Ormiston Gorge out of Alice Springs. That is magnificent. I also like going up to, say, the Barrier Reef, the snorkelling out of there, great adventures and Quicksilver. Excellent. I've got to mention Strawn, down on the west coast of Tassie. You can take the boat out and wind up on an accessible boardwalk that takes you to the 1,000-year-old human pine. It's just stunning. Port Arthur, the management at Port Arthur have done as much as they can to make the site accessible, and it's really worth going down there to see. One of the most bizarre, I think, was the Pinnacles Desert, which is just north of Perth at Cervantes. It's quite bizarre, and it's well worth a visit and quite accessible.
You can just drive your car around.
You can drive through it, and there is some accommodation up there. That's brilliant. One I really like is the penguin experience at Phillip Island. Mm-hmm. That's really good.
With all the travel that you've done, what have you found to be the best option, getting from A to B?
Well, look, I think the airlines in Australia do a really good job. They've, when you ring up and book in, you tell them what your requirements are. They can arrange for a meet and greet service. When you book your luggage in, they'll then help you out with what they call a sky chair, which fits up the aisle of the aeroplane.
What about trains and buses?
Up and down the east coast, the trains are reasonably good, so there's the facility there. Buses, the long-haul buses, just isn't an option at this stage.
Right, and when you get to your destination, what are the options?
Well, the obvious one at first is the accessible cabs, and there are a number of accessible cabs around the place. Once you get away from that, you're looking at maybe the hire cars. You know, Hertz and Avis provide hand-controlled vehicles, but then you start to have a problem. I mean, the transport options are pretty thin.
So this is the device that helps you get around when you're travelling?
This is my personal hand control. It's very simple. Into brake, up to accelerate. I've got the little indicator switch there. Hertz and Avis, if you're flying interstate and flying driving, Hertz and Avis provide a vehicle with a hand control. If it's not a suitable hand control for you, you are, I believe, able to take your own and they will fit it to one of their vehicles.
No doubt you need to give them a bit of warning.
A bit of warning is required, and I understand there's no extra charge.
Fantastic.
Which is great.
Come on, we'll give you a bit of a hand on.
Okie doke.
Okay, and we'll
pop
the brakes on. Yeah.
A relatively new option is the Norden car, which you can hire and drive yourself. There's only 2 in Australia at the moment, but I think we'll be seeing a lot more of them. Also, in each state, there are specialised tour operators that can take assisted tours. Bruce says that whether you're visiting a vineyard or any other tourist attraction, people with mobility difficulties have these certain needs.
Somewhere good to park, a dedicated parking spot. Somewhere easy access in, good, easy, gentle gradients around a place such as this. Paved paths wherever possible. Access to the cafe, accessible toilets. Generally, something that takes you also close to the action. You want to get involved, you don't want to view from a distance. So, yeah, if they sort of meet those sorts of criteria, then we write them up positively.
When it comes to accommodation, what do you look for?
Number of things. Parking, flat access into the room, circulation space within a room, and appropriate bed height to get on and off. You hate terrible getting onto a low bed and trying to get out of it. You've got to be able to turn the lights on and off from bed. Certainly an accessible bathroom with plenty of circulation space. Be able to get to the loo, the shower, grab rails.
The guide contains over 90 floor plans of accessible accommodation in Australia. By providing the layout of the room and its key measurements, people can work out whether it suits them. There are going to be moments where you have the odd spot of bother.
Only occasionally.
Are people helpful?
Really helpful, yeah. Generally across the board, most people will do what they can. And the beauty of it, a lot of them ask first, which is a real key.
After the break, we're looking at how to maintain and restore the best cars in the world. Just take a look at this. What impresses me most about this fantastic selection of Bentleys is their condition. Now, bear in mind, they are all in excess of 60 years of age, and they look and they present as if they were brand new. Who in fact maintains these cars or restores them so that they are able to stay in this pristine condition? Well, in fact, a number of people do, one of whom we're going to meet right now. In this workshop, Rob McDermott and his band of enthusiastic helpers rebuild, restore and maintain Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars of all ages. Here, under one roof, you will find top tradesmen plying their trades with the meticulous care which would once have been demanded by Henry Royce himself. Engine builders, panel workers, upholsterers, wood frame specialists. And of course, not just restorations, but general maintenance as well. At any one given time, there could be as many as 100 Rolls-Royces and Bentleys within the confines of the walls of these premises. And in some parts, in some places, it looks a bit like a Rolls-Royce Bentley graveyard. But in fact, even if these cars individually are not completely rebuilt, they will all provide components which can be. But in truth, most of them, in one form or another, will come back to life. All these parts, looking very much like junk, can and will be restored. These wheels, for example, are brought back to life simply because buying new ones is just about impossible. So what is it that would cause a man to devote his life's work to just one brand of car? Here's Rob McDermott.
Rob, tell me how you got involved in this business in the first place.
Well, it was really my father. He was a user of Rolls-Royce cars. He enjoyed lovely cars, and his favourite cars during the 1950s, as I was a boy, were Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars. So he got me interested, and then it sort of went from there. I became very heavily involved as a hobby. And then after school, and I went to university, did a degree in economics and politics, which really didn't interest me very much. And then I turned my life and my business, from a hobby into a business. And I've really never looked back from that. I'm totally involved in Rolls-Royce and the history, the cars, that sort of thing. And Silver Ghosts in particular are my main love. They're my hobby.
Now, this may be something of an esoteric sort of a question, but let's say an early 30s Rolls or something, and it comes in and you do actually begin with a basic chassis. What sort of money are you looking at?
Well,
hugely expensive.
Yes, it is. It depends on the car. It depends on the standard to which the owner wants it restored. I mean, a concourse winning standard is not the same as making it serviceable.
Right.
But a major restoration on a car that comes in complete and going can cost up to a couple of $100,000. And we've had some examples that have gone to over $500,000.
Yes. But the final product could be worth that or more, could it not?
Oh yes, some of these cars are very, very valuable.
Yeah. So the chances, in fact, of over-capitalising, if you do it right, are pretty remote.
Well, you have to choose the right thing first.
Right, okay.
Some cars you could over-capitalise quite easily, others it would be impossible. They're just so valuable.
How much is so valuable? What's the most expensive sort of motor car these days in Rolls-Royce terms?
Well, veteran Silver Ghost, that's pre-First World War Silver Ghost, with a special history and particularly beautiful cars, can fetch $1 million Australian or more.
Now, you must see a lot of interesting cars historically come through. I mean, obviously, a lot of these cars must have a story to them. And I'm just looking over my shoulder here at this utility, which sounds like sacrilege.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Right. Well, this is a very interesting example. It's a 1924 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. It was originally a Tourer, open car. And it was bought in England in 1924 for Sir Reg Purbrick, who was a Member of Parliament, and his friend Sir Winston Churchill.
Oh, right.
Well known.
Okay.
Now, this car was shipped to their holiday house, which they shared, in Biarritz. It lived there for the first 10 years of its life, and then Purbrick sent his son to Australia to run the vineyard, the winery, and the famous Chateau Taville.
Oh, right, okay.
And they brought the car with them.
Eventually, the Purbricks bought a new Rolls, and the early model passed to a farmer in northern Victoria, and he took to it with a cutting torch. McDermott's plans for the car are simply to bring it back to its original Tourer condition. It's really only when you see such components as this early 1920s engine that one can appreciate why people go to so much trouble. This is more than an engine, it's a work of art, a sculpture. And it is typical of the genius of Henry Royce that this is what he demanded of those early Rolls. Not surprisingly, McDermott's buy and restore Rolls on their own behalf, which simply means you can go and rush out and buy one, ready to go if you feel the urge. Rolls say that about 80% of all Rolls-Royces ever made are still alive and well, so your rebuilt roller should last you for at least 50 years, give or take a few.
As you can see, I'm at the Sheraton in Brisbane, and I have found a wonderful spot to whip up one of my soon-to-be favourite dishes. But just before I do, it seems a shame that Australian hotels and restaurants can't help some of the people who are going through slightly difficult times. One of the chefs here Francis Quinlivan has come up with a ripper of an idea. Now, Francis, tell me something about your plan.
Well, our program as we're running with it at the moment is to use the food which is left over from banquets and buffets and to keep this food aside for Brisbane City Mission or St Vincent de Paul in an effort to stop wastage and to supplement their food with ours. And so we're using a lot of this food rather than throwing it in the bins,
right,
has
so
had
food,
been the...
Food of this quality.
That's right.
Right.
Food which is still of nutritional value.
Yeah. Now, there had to have been some Health Commission problems with that. How did you get around that?
We had some problems initially, then we gained indemnification from civil and state litigations from Brisbane City Mission and St Vincent de Paul.
Right. This is a very commendable idea.
It's a logical idea, very logical. You have all this surplus food. The other alternative is to throw it in the bin. There's maybe 100 to 200 people a week that are better off because the Sheraton puts food into this proposal.
Patrick and his team are extremely careful about the storage, selection and preservation of the food they distribute, avoiding foods that spoil quickly. They also work in closely with the charity staff to ensure the pickup and allocation of the food is also conducted in safety. In 18 months, the program has produced 20,000 meals, all without incident. But it's about time I did some work. So I'm off to the top of the hotel for a great view of Brisbane and to whip up a good old-fashioned favourite. You know, it's funny how foods go out of fashion. I was reminded of this morning as I was having breakfast in this wonderful Sheraton in Brisbane. When I first started in the restaurant industry, I worked in a hotel. It wasn't quite the size of the Sheraton. I think it had about 20 rooms. But the most popular breakfast dish was kidneys on toast. Now, I mean, I think people would be amazed to even think of kidneys on toast. But it's a beautiful dish, but we seem to have lost our interest a bit in offal. We were brought up with it. We don't seem to like it quite as much anymore. But anyway, I'm going to show you this wonderful devilled kidneys, which is also on toast. It's a beautiful dish, nice light luncheon with a salad or something like that. And I think it's worth having a look at again. But enough of that, let's cook. Now, the important thing about kidneys is the preparation. You buy them in the shop, they look a bit daggy, don't they? Be very careful that you have to take all this outside skin off. And the other problem with kidneys is they have this fat in the centre. These are lamb's kidneys, of course. Now, you have to take that out, otherwise they really aren't going to be tough and chewy. Just like that. Now, I won't bother with the others because I've got the other cut up. Now, I would then just slice them up. Right, so I've got some kidneys, I've got a hot pan, and I just put a little bit of oil on this. First of all, I'm going to brown the kidneys slightly. The other problem with kidneys, you overcook them too much, they're like bullets. And I'm sure we've all had kidneys like bullets. Not a very pleasant experience. So the idea is to seal them first, and then you take them out of the pan. So when I say seal, what I'm talking about is brown, some freshly ground pepper, some freshly ground salt. Just toss them around. Now, I'm not talking cooking here. All I'm doing is sealing them, and that will seal all the juices in. Then I'll build the sauce, add the kidneys back. Now, if they're not sealed, what will happen is all the juices from the kidney will flow into the sauce, and it's not really what you want because it changes the flavour. Just like that. Don't have to be perfect. Remove that from the pan. You see why I put such a little amount of oil in? Because I don't want all the oil in the kidneys there. Right. The sauce. This is the best part of it. I love sauces. A little bit more oil. Once again, not too much, but a little bit more than the last time. And to that, we're going to add some chopped garlic, some finely chopped onion, 1 clove of garlic, about, 1/8 of an onion, some mushrooms. We're just going to stir that around a little. Once again, just to seal, what I wanted is slightly softened, but I don't want this brown because I'm not trying to give that nutty flavour to this sauce. Now, devilled kidneys are a traditional English dish, and it is actually made with cream. But if you don't want to use cream, what you can use is chicken stock or just some water, maybe with a little bit of chicken stock powder. But in this case, I'm using, this has got half cream and it's got half water. So that's all I'm doing. I'm cutting down on the cream. The old days you would have put 10 tons of cream in. Some mustard, a little bit of Worcester sauce. It is an English dish, you see. And a little bit of Tabasco. I don't know where the Tabasco came from. Maybe it's a Creole dish as well. And some parsley. And all we are then going to do is reduce that. Mix it up really well, because you don't want the pure cream in one corner and the mustard in the other. So you mix it together. Now we will add the kidneys back in. Just mix them in well. Now they've only been sealed, so obviously they have to cook to a certain extent, but remember my warning. Please, please don't overcook them. Now I can hear you at home saying, what about the toast? Well, I've got some lovely country bread here, and I'm just going to brush both sides lightly with oil, and I'm going to grill it. But of course, you could just put it in your toaster, if you've got a wide toaster, and toast it. Or under your overhead grill, and we'll just whack that on a flat grill. Keep moving the kidneys around, because the whole thing about it is obviously the heat source is more in the centre of the pan. What you want to make sure is that they're all cooked evenly. And the bread is grilled evenly. See, that's looking good. My mum would be proud of this. Oh, she used to cook this dish beautifully. Beautifully. Now, how are we going? Excuse my fingers. Oh, beautiful. That's cooked perfectly. The only problem here is, as you can see, I think I got a bit excited with the amount of kidneys, and I'm dropping them all over the place. You're not allowed to watch that, Peter. Pretend that one's not there. Some of the sauce over the top. That is a delicious old dish revisited. A little bit of parsley over the top. Don't worry about the wind, put it around the edge. And if you're feeling really fancy, a little bit of pepper around the plate, just to give it a little bit of a fancy garnish. I reckon that could come back. I reckon the Sheraton next year will be serving that for breakfast. And what I want them to do, Huey's deviled kidneys.
There comes a time in the life of every sofa where the owners will want to change the colour of it or even protect it. You might have moved and the colour scheme doesn't work anymore, or it might be showing a few signs of wear and tear, and a simple new cover will transform it and give it a new lease on life. Now, how about a sofa cover that doesn't involve any sewing, and better still, one that you can print yourself? Well, to achieve that, we're going to send you on some interesting shopping trips. You'll need to visit your hardware store to buy a painter's drop sheet. Now, if you don't know what they are, they're heavy pieces of calico that come in enormous sizes. You'll need to get a paintbrush and a bottle of turpentine, and then off to a photocopy machine to print out some designs that you'd like to see printed on your new sofa cover. Isn't it amazing what turpentine and a photocopy can do? We've actually printed onto the painter's drop sheet, which is going to become our drop-over sofa cover. And the things you need are very, very simple. I know we've told you to go to the hardware store for some turpentine and a paintbrush, but you'll also need a spoon to press on the design, probably a pair of scissors to clip away any excess, because at the edge of some photocopies you've got some marks that you will want to eliminate, and some sticky tape to hold it in place. We've taken our photostat designs from a very interesting source. Available to you at most art supply stores and some craft shops are books that are literally filled with hundreds of very interesting motifs. And through their copyright, they allow you to photostat up to 10 of any design, all of them if you wish, to use on a particular project. And you'll find that some of them are very, very intricate, and the bigger they get, the more interesting they become. And of course, with a photostat machine, you can increase or decrease them as you choose. As I mentioned earlier, you will want to cut away any markings that you don't wish to show on your printing, and then trim away a fair bit of the paper so that you at least know where your design starts and finishes. Then, to get started, sticky tape it in place, dip your brush into terps, and away you go. place the photostat motifs at random all over the drop sheet, and to make them permanent, simply use a dry, hot iron. And by the way, they may be washed. And the good part about this technique is that it may be applied to virtually any smooth fabric. This is a poly cotton that we've used in cushion covers, and it can even be used on lampshades and on curtains. Now, stay with me because I'm going to show you how simple it is to pin, pleat and fold this drop sheet into a sofa cover. The first step in this next process is to fold the cover in half down the middle and then line up that centre crease with the centre of the sofa. Then take one edge and throw it over the rest of the sofa, which reveals the right side of the cover. The trick to fitting our cover is to first start at the front of the couch, fold the drop sheet well under the cushion at the front and line up the edge with the bottom of the couch. Tuck excess fabric well under the cushions. Next, go to the back of the couch and pull the drop sheet down and tuck it under the cushions at the back, smoothing the drop sheet as you go. Now work on the sides again, tucking the drop sheet under the cushions. The more drop sheet you can tuck underneath the cushions, the better this will be, as this is what holds it all in place. At the back, bring around any excess and tie it into a knot. Make sure that knot at the back of the sofa is tied as tightly as you possibly can. Now, I know there's a lot of excess fabric, but put some muscle into it and it should look good. However, if you've bought a drop sheet that isn't quite as large as the one we've used, you may like to overlap that excess fabric and hold it in place with safety pins. Whichever method you use, make sure you tuck all the excess underneath the sofa. Now, one extra thing that will help you will be small blocks of wood that look something like this, or the tubes from the rolls of fabric. They're very strong cardboard tubes which can be cut with a bread knife. What these do is get tucked down into the sides and back of the sofa, and they act as wedges, preventing the fabric from working its way up and therefore creating a messy look. You can cut them to the size that you need for your sofa, but do wedge them down well underneath the seats. And how about our idea of taking this transfer through into accessories that will only make our sofa cover look even better? Brightly coloured cushions look terrific with more crowns on them, and plain white cotton curtains look wonderful with small crowns transferred all over them. We've also carried this theme through to a simple calico lampshade, which was very easily decorated. And there's a fabric print on the wall, which we've framed. These are all great ideas, they're inexpensive, they're very quick to do, and I know you'll have a lot of fun doing it.
If you'd like more information on any of the stories on tonight's show, don't forget you can contact one of our information lines. If you'd like an information sheet to be mailed to you, call 0055 31600. But make sure you listen carefully to the instructions and record the chosen segments as well as your name and address. If you have a fax machine, dial 0055 35522 on your fax machine. Follow the prompts and the information sheet will be faxed to you immediately. As always, our lines are open 24 hours a day. Now, next week, Tonya Todman gives furniture a real wallpaper pasting. Jim Brown travels down the beautiful Pieman River in Tasmania. Ian cooks up a soup destined to become a family favourite. And I meet up with a very eccentric lady, South Australian artist Marnie Fenton. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We'll see you next week.
Healthy, Wealthy and Wise, proudly brought to you by Uncle Toby's and Edgel's new frozen vegetable range.